All right, to understand what a moral judgment is, we first have to understand what a claim is, because moral judgments are expressed as claims. So what's a claim? A claim is simply a statement about something. A claim asserts that something is the case. So I might make a statement or a claim about an event that I've witnessed, or about a friend of mine, or about a thought that's in my head, okay? Anytime I assert that something is the case, I'm making a statement, a claim, okay? Now, the important thing for us to recognize about statements and claims is that all statements are either true or false. And no statement is both true and false at the same time. And no statement is neither true nor false at a given moment in time. We might not know whether a particular statement is true or false, but we know that it's one of those. We know that it's either true or false. All right, so take a look at these statements. Emma's enrolled in Phil 20. This is a statement that's asserting something is the case about Emma and her enrollment status in this class. Putting 2 apples in a bucket that already contains 2 apples will make the bucket contain 3 apples. This is asserting something about the number of apples in a bucket, and it happens to be a false claim. The U.S. Civil War ended in 1865, an assertion that something is the case about a historical event. And then finally, it's wrong to skin puppies alive. All right, now I want you to notice something about the first 3 statements here. How would you determine whether or not these statements are true or false? And how would you demonstrate to somebody else that they should agree with you that these particular statements are either true or false? So for the first statement about Emma and her enrollment in Phil 20, you might say something like, well, show me your roster, tell me who Emma is, and let's see if her name appears on your roster. And if it does, the statement is true, and if it doesn't, the statement is false. For the second statement, about apples in the bucket, how do you prove that it's false that 2 apples added to 2 apples equals 3 apples? And you say, well, we'd appeal to the principles of mathematics, in particular the principle of addition, to show that it's false that adding 2 apples to 2 apples equals 3 apples. And with the Civil War statement, we might say something like, well, go to a history book or an authoritative website and verify that this, in fact, is the year that the Civil War ended. And if the source indicates that, then we would judge the statement true. Now, what about the final statement, though? It's wrong to skin puppies alive. How do you determine that that statement is either true or false? And maybe more importantly, how do you convince someone else that your judgment of that statement's truth or falsity is reliable? And you might be thinking to yourself, well, this statement's kind of different from the others. The others are about statements, are statements about things external to the person who's making the statement. But this statement seems to be more along the lines of kind of a personal preference or a personal attitude about puppies and what the proper ways to treat them are. And I want you to make a distinction between a preference and a statement of preference, okay? So I have a preference for vanilla ice cream over chocolate ice cream. I don't know why I have that preference, I just do. And that preference is neither true nor false, right? It just kind of is. But when I start to make statements about that preference, now I'm going to be making claims that are either true or false. So if I really do prefer vanilla ice cream to chocolate, and I state to you, I prefer chocolate ice cream to vanilla ice cream, I just made a false statement. Okay, so statements of preference are either true or false. So if this were a statement of preference, then we have to determine whether or not it's true or false. Now, the funny thing about statements of preference is that the same statement can be true for one person and false for another. So when I say the statement, I prefer vanilla ice cream to chocolate ice cream, that statement is true for me. Now, when you say those exact same words, that statement may be false for you. Okay, so you have the same statement that is both true and false depending on the person who's saying it. And that seems to violate this principle up here that statements are either true or false, not both true and false. But those 2 statements, even though they have the exact same words, they're really different statements. Because when I say I like vanilla ice cream over chocolate ice cream, what I'm really saying is John likes vanilla ice cream over chocolate ice cream. And when you say the statement I like chocolate ice cream better than vanilla ice cream, you're saying something where I is really referring to you, your name. Okay, so those are actually 2 different statements. So we still haven't, even when we make statements of preference and the statement is true for one person and false for another, we haven't violated this principle that the same statement can't be both true and false at the same time. Okay, so maybe we look at this statement and we say, okay, I get that. I see that it's either true or false if it's a statement of preference, but it doesn't really seem like a mere preference. This seems to be more about belief or attitude or an opinion. It's a moral claim about what the right kind of treatment for puppies is. And so then the question is this. Well, if this is a statement of an opinion or a belief, and all statements are either true or false, then that means that this statement of opinion or belief is either true or false. And it can't be both. So that means if you believe this statement is true and I believe this statement is false, one of us is wrong. Because all statements are true or false. They can't be both true and false. So then the question for us is, all right, I know how I would prove these other statements to be true or false. How do I prove that a particular moral claim is true or false? And that's going to force me to answer this question. What makes an action moral or immoral? Because if I can define what those criteria are, then I can use those to evaluate whether or not this statement about puppies is true or false. And so the question for us is this. What are the criteria that we should rely upon when judging actions, when determining which actions are morally permissible, morally prohibited, and morally obligatory? And that's the question we're going to be exploring for the next 7 weeks or so. And we're going to look at how different people over the last couple of thousands of years have tried to answer this question. And we're going to see which of those answers seem more satisfying to us than others.